Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Bakersfield Redux. Today, I am so excited to have the opportunity to talk to Willie Cantu, a former Buckaroo and member of the classic Buckaroos lineup, about his time being a part of the Bakersfield Sound and the rest of his career in music as well. Willie has so many great memories and so much great advice to offer, so I'm so excited that we all get to dive into this chapter of Bakersfield history together. I'd like to just start by thanking you so much for taking the time out of your day to just chat with me a little bit. I'm super excited for this, get to share some firsthand perspective about what it was like to be on the music scene in the 1960s, part of the Bakersfield Sound, and of course the illustrious career that you had afterwards as well. So thank you so much for chatting with me tonight.
You're quite welcome. It's my pleasure.
I think that the best place for us to start would be just tell me a little bit about your early life, how you got into music, and kind of your where you hoped that it would go.
Well, I never thought about where I wanted it to go. I got when I didn't really start playing any kind or studying anything about music until I was in junior high school in the seventh grade. So, as a lot of other musicians, I started in the beginner band. Okay, but it was because of the inspiration of marching bands, having heard marching bands in the local parades,
Right.
like the Buccaneer Day parades uh, that we that we uh, that we had in Corpus once a year. Okay, so that just the sound of the drums as the band marches by, is enough to excite me to feel that I could someday learn to do that myself. So that's where it really started, and also going to Mexican dances with my dad, my mom, my sister, and hearing the Tejano music, that inspired me to want to learn to play the drum set.
Right.
Okay, and
Awesome.
so I always felt that all I had to do is just walk up there, sit down at the drums, and I knew what to do, but I really didn't. It's just in my mind. Okay, so it wasn't until I joined the beginner band uh, at my junior high school. And by the way, the the name of the band. Oh, okay, first of all, the name of the school was Win Seal, and it was the Win Seal Buckaroos.
That's
Uh,
incredible.
so that was my first time as a Buckaroo, was with the junior high school band, the Win
Wow.
Seal Buckaroos. Okay, and so I entered into the beginner band, and then uh, went into the eighth grade and was able to be part of the A band, which is the marching band and concert band, and and then in the ninth grade I was still in the A band. Okay, but by the time I was in the ninth grade, I had decided that I wanted to learn to play the drum set. So I used to borrow drums and take them home from the school and make my own drum set
Oh,
at
wow.
home for the weekend.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not hearing you. Are you
Can you hear me?
okay? Now I can hear you.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, I saw your mouth move, but no sound. Okay,
Technology.
okay. So basically, that's how I started,
Hmm.
and with makeshift drum sets. And I at a dance, at one of the school dances, there was a band of professional musicians performing there, and I met the drummer, and that was kind of like the beginning of a relationship. Excuse me. Later on, he happened to come to my home. He was recruiting young people for Sunday school. That's how we met. So my dad brought him upstairs to my room where I was practicing my drums. Just not a drum set, just drums. And I couldn't believe that he was there because I remembered him from the dance. and we talked about drum lessons, and he became my teacher.
Oh, wonderful.
So I studied with him for about 3 years before I started playing professionally myself.
Right.
Okay. And I used to go to jobs with him and sit in at the end of the night on one or two songs with his band. So that
Oh,
was
wow.
kind of like me getting a little experience playing with professionals.
Right.
So that's how I started. Okay.
Okay.
And I had an interest in jazz to begin with because of my junior high school friends. And that that interest grew. And it was my inspiration for developing
Right.
to a higher level. And so basically, that's how I started. And let's move on to the question on how I met Buck because it's all connected. Okay.
Make it all connected. I felt like one thing
Yeah.
was leading to
Uh,
another.
so when I was like in the 10th grade, I uh, I had a drummer friend had been going to study at North Texas State University,
Right.
and so my ambition was to do the same. And but that never happened. But what happened with this drummer friend, he'd come home during the summer months, and he was older than me, and also a professional drummer, and he happened to work at this club called the Maverick Club, and it was a country and western band there.
Hmm.
Okay, so it was time. Okay, he was there for a month or two, and he called me up and he said, Willie, they need a drummer over at the Maverick Club. He says, so and so, and then there was two or three other drummers that had tried to work there, but they didn't like it, so they'd quit. Okay, and he was the third drummer on the job, and he had to go back to the university.
Right.
Okay, so uh, he told him that he would try and find a drummer. So he called me, and you see, by that time, I'd already been working around town a lot, gotten experience, and belonged to the musicians union.
Right.
And I had developed a work ethic in the sense of that I would never turn a job down. Okay, and especially being a professional musician, it was kind of like my duty to try anything and everything,
Yes.
all the different styles of music and what have you. And so with that attitude, and I didn't really like country music because it was all really like the only music I'd heard that was country. It all sounded like Hank Williams, nasally, and that style. And to my ears, I w- I was too hip from listening to
Right.
jazz,
Hmm.
a jazz snob, so to speak. But anyway, I said to my friend Don, I said, uh, I'll go check it out. So I joined that band for about a month, and it so happened that month they were bringing people in from Nashville, and we would back them up. Say like uh, Charlie Louvin,
Okay.
the Louvin
Yeah.
brothers, or Justin Tubb,
Hmm.
Ernest Tubb's son,
Right.
and a few other people came in, and we'd back them up, and it was okay. I wasn't, but the music that I liked was what I heard on the jukebox,
Right.
which was Ray Price,
Hmm.
Jim Reeves, and Buck Owens. So how Buck Owens happened to come to town was uh, the day that President Kennedy was assassinated.
Hmm.
That was the night that they were going to be performing at that club. So as it turned out, we were supposed to alternate with Buck's band.
Right.
Well, when we got to the club, Buck had decided that he would do the whole night himself, he and the band. And unbeknownst to me, Don Rich, Doyle Holly, and the previous drummer had come into town a day early, and they came out to the club, so they heard me play,
Oh my goodness.
with the band. And so uh, that was the connection of how Buck call me to join the band. But I stayed there the whole night and listened to Buck Owens and the Buckaroos, and I could not believe how great it sounded.
Right.
And it was almost like listening to a band from another planet.
Yeah.
I'd never heard country music like that,
Mm-hmm.
like the Buck Owens sound.
Mm-hmm. Definitely a
And
different sound.
yes, it was different from Nashville. Okay. So this was in November, what, the 24th, that Saturday night. And so I met Buck and the rest of the band that night. And Doyle Holly is the one that asked for my phone number.
Mm-hmm.
And I never really thought much about it. He asked if I would come out to California if ever there was a job for for me to go to, not necessarily with Buck, but just somehow he had said that they had heard me play and they liked the way I played, and so therefore they needed my number. So it's a good thing because uh, February of the following year, the first week of February, I got a call from Buck. It was on a Monday, and he asked me would I be interested in joining the band. And he told me that they did mainly road work, out on the road most of the time, and I didn't know what that really meant.
Right.
See? So my aspirations before this was to go to New York City.
Right.
Okay, I'd quit school uh, the previous year, and so I was trying to make up my mind when to move to New York. So instead, this comes along,
Right.
and so I said to Buck, I'm going to have to talk this over with my parents and ask permission to leave home. And so he said, that's fine, I understand. So call me as soon as I can. So I talked to my parents, and they were ready for me to leave home anyway.
Oh my goodness.
So there was no problem there. So I called Buck. He sent me the airfare because that was a lot of money. We didn't have that kind of money.
Right.
He sent me the airfare, and so he said you can pay me later. And Saturday of that same week, I flew to Bakersfield, and the band wasn't at the airport to meet me, but the wives were. And the reason for the band not being there is because they were in Hollywood at Capitol Records recording.
Right.
Okay, and what they recorded was the song "Together Again" and "My Heart Skips a Beat." Okay, so and they used a studio drummer then. Okay, so I didn't meet the band for another week. I met Buck the following day at the ranch, and I also met Merle Haggard and Bonnie Owens
Wow.
that following day. They came out to the ranch to get Buck's opinion of their latest little demo. They had
Mm-hmm.
a song out. I don't remember the title of it, but uh, I remember thinking that I was really taken with the way Merle Haggard sounded,
Yeah.
you know, and I thought he was very different from Buck.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that was my first impression. So within a week, we were ready to go out and do our first date up in Northern California. So the whole band met out at the ranch, and we boarded the motorhome that Buck had, and off we went. That was the
Right.
beginning of my Buckaroo experience, and we hadn't rehearsed.
Oh
No,
no.
no rehearsal at all. I was just going by what I had heard on the records,
Right.
you know.
Oh my goodness.
So nothing was ever said about, well, we need you to play this way or this is how we do things. Nothing. I'll tell you uh, what Buck told me that very first night that we played. Don and I were staying. We used to share rooms. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
Doyle and Tom and Don and me. We like two to a room. That's the way it was.
Right.
And so, excuse me, Buck comes into our room. He says, uh, "Just checking, see how my new drummer is and all that." And so things didn't really feel right, but I just kind of just didn't say much about that.
Right.
And I said, I turned to Buck and I said, "Is there anything that I need to know?" You know, and he said, "Well, there's two things. One is we play on top of the beat," and I didn't know what he was talking about. So all I knew was I had learned to play just on the beat. That's all I knew. You know, you play on the beat rather than behind the beat or on top of the beat. But I had never heard those other expressions before, on top of the beat. So I just didn't say anything and just listened to him. And he said, "The other thing is, if I don't like what you're doing, I will always let you know." Okay. That was the end of the story right there. So Buck left the room and I turned to Don and said, "What did he mean on top of the beat?" And Don looked at me and he smiled with that smile of his. He said, and he'd wink at me and he said, "You'll hear it."
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, "I'll hear it." I'm thinking, what does that really mean? Because I had never thought about playing on top of the beat or behind the beat or anything other than just on it. So anyway, move on to the club, and Buck always started the songs. There was no count off, never counted anything. So the drummer didn't have the responsibility as you do in a lot of bands. Okay, so and all it was, Buck starts playing rhythm, and we all join in. Bam, right there. You know, maybe after four bars or whatever, and the night went by, and it was a breeze. I never thought I might have thought about. I'll find out, you know, what on the beat is. He started playing. We all came in together, and it was like I'd been there all along.
Right.
I
Wow.
fit, you know,
Mm-hmm.
I fit that easily. So I never thought about it. He never said anything. Nobody said anything other than they might have complimented me on my first night, said that I did a good job, you know. But there were no train wrecks.
Well, that's
So,
always good.
so that was it. I never thought about it again. I probably talked to Don about it, and he said everything was fine. So that's all I needed to know. So anyway, next question.
Oh, the next one. This one.
I'll let you ask the questions.
This one, several people wanted to know, and I feel like you've already touched on a little bit, but just expanding a little bit more on what it was like to work with Buck.
It was a breeze because, first of all, being as young as I was, which is 17,
Right.
and the next youngest was Don. He was like 24, 25. Okay. Doyle Holly was maybe 28 or 29. Tom Bromley was early 30s, maybe 34 or so. And Buck was around 35.
Mm-hmm.
So you see the gap
Yes.
in ages between Buck and me. But he always treated me just like the rest of the guys. He never treated me like I was 17. Okay. And so I was very thankful for that. You know,
Right.
I mean, I had to become an adult right then and there, you know.
Yeah.
No exceptions, you know, I was treated just like anyone else.
Mhm.
So I forgot what your question was.
How it was like working with him,
Uh,
which
it
you
was,
did
like I
touch
said,
on
it
that.
was a breeze because there was never any hassle. I never gave him a problem, and he never was a problem for me. So
Well, that sounds like the dream for any musician.
it was. And once we were all set up and ready to start, okay, our portion of the show, uh, it was like being in another world,
Hmm.
you know, especially playing music at that level.
Right.
It couldn't be any better.
Hmm.
So therefore, there's a certain vibe that kind of takes over. Whether if anyone else realizes it or not, I I felt it. It was totally different than any other experience I had ever had playing music. It was great, let me tell you. Every time Buck said the first few words of "Together Again," that's all I needed to hear to get chills. Just
Oh,
just
yes.
hearing that, and it just created a certain vibe. That there's a certain zone that you go to when you're playing the music that doesn't happen any other way. So
That is
it's
absolutely wonderful. How amazing, like just being able to be a part of that and have those kind of experiences when the music industry had really never seen anything like that before. So that is
yeah,
awesome. I can only
Buck,
imagine.
yeah, Buck was definitely very unique, and it's obvious. But he had on stage, it was like that magic. As soon as he opened his mouth and started singing, it was like no one else on earth,
Hmm.
and the whole focus was right there, the band, him and the band, and it was the right combination of people because we all got along good, uh, off the stand as well as on the stand.
Right.
We all complimented each other on the stand, which is the main thing. So,
And that's what people saw a lot of what was on stage. But I want to talk about some of the off stage stuff too. What are some of the funniest memories or road stories or anything just really memorable or a good moment that you had? And I'm sure there are so many, and we could talk for
well,
hours about it.
let me just say this. Uh, I'm not a person that collects stories, okay? But there were some funny things that happened, obviously, and also with me, and I'll tell you this about me, that maybe a couple of months into being in the band, we were up in the northern part of Canada, and Sheb Willie,
Oh,
you
yes.
you know who? Okay,
I'm
he
familiar.
was he was part of the show, and we were staying at the same hotel, and you see, I always felt self-conscious being 17.
Hmm.
So one of the things that I did in an interview for the fan club,
Hmm.
the Buckaroo fan club
Right.
magazine, was in the bios that they put in there. I gave myself like 2 or 3 years older than I was.
Yes.
Okay, so when I was out on the road, I was kind of self-conscious about being younger. So I decided to. I thought if I bought a pipe and walked around, that maybe I might look older. And the funniest thing that happened was this one morning, I went down to have breakfast, and Sheb Woolley was sitting at this table, and I asked him if I could join him, and he was sitting there with a pipe, and I joined him, and I had my pipe, and talk about feeling really stupid.
Yeah.
But I'm sure he chuckled
I'm sure he did
to
too.
himself about that. But I think he kind of understood what I was going through. And after that experience, I put that pipe away.
Right.
And I might have given it to Buck or somebody else.
Yeah.
That's about the funniest thing I can tell you.
Yeah. That is actually hilarious. I think that, you know, maybe there was an attempt there to fit in, like as far as age, but your abilities and your talents definitely established you as someone who was credible and somebody who was talented and somebody who was exactly where they needed to be and was definitely experienced enough for the position. So I enjoy hearing that though, because I think that sometimes people put, musicians, celebrities on a pedestal, and they're human just like the rest of us, and
Exactly.
they have a desire
Yeah.
to fit in as well. So that is such a real story, and that is really funny. So thank you for sharing that. I'm also really curious about not only your memories of Buck and working with him, but the other Buckaroos. Like, Don, Doyle, Tom. What were they like to work with, and what are maybe some of your favorite memories
Well,
of
we
them?
were all different,
Hmm.
obviously, uh, and our likes and dislikes were very different.
Right.
Okay, Don, who was closest to my age, was actually the one that I was the closest to. He was kind of like a big brother in a sense,
Hmm.
and I introduced him to jazz, and
Right.
he'd heard it before, but we used to get together when we were home from the road. Any latest jazz records that I had, excuse me, I pretty well shared them with him,
Right.
and we would go to his home and listen, and either he'd like something or he wouldn't, and he'd tell me,
Hmm.
and that was fine. But not only music, different styles of music, uh, but also we shared a interest in cars, sports cars.
Right.
Okay, so I I bought a TR2, a
Mm.
Triumph TR2, and he bought a Austin Healey 3000.
Right.
Okay, and then Buck joined the club, and he got himself a Corvette,
Oh my goodness.
a 427 Corvette convertible, and I got to drive that Corvette one time to a race to Riverside
Right.
there, and I'm surprised that he let me borrow it. Actually,
Hmm.
he suggested that I
Wow.
that I take his car, and I remember driving through the desert, uh, that I decided to see how fast I I would go,
Hmm.
speedy wise. And this is a long straightaway and no other cars that I could see around. So I just stepped on the pedal and I went up to 125. And I felt that was the limit. So I quickly let off the pedal and talk about a heartthrob, just
Right.
my heart just, it was such a rush. And I would never do that again. I only did it because it was a Corvette and it had that kind of power. My 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 Triumph, I never drove past the speed limit.
Right.
So anyway, that's that's about as much as I can tell you about that.
So, what was your favorite kind of project that you worked on with the Buckaroos, as far as a tour, a concert, an album, anything? Your favorite?
There isn't a fit. Maybe, I, as I said, maybe there isn't. Perhaps Carnegie Hall.
Mhm.
You know, um, I remember thinking while I was on stage that I could pretty well be set up right where Gene Krupa set up his drums.
Right.
This is back in the late 30s, when he was with Benny Goodman Band. You know who Benny Goodman was?
Yes, I am
Okay.
familiar.
So, and this is during the swing era,
Hmm.
you know, and so Gene Krupa was like my very first major influence as a drum set,
Yes. Hmm.
player. But I went beyond that, you know, not too long after that. It was Max Roach and then Elvin Jones and all the other people out there, you know. But that was, I would think, the most memorable, Carnegie Hall, because of just the fact of what it is,
Right.
you know. I didn't feel that I really deserved being there because of what I knew of what had come before.
Right.
I certainly did not see me as up at the level as Gene Krupa or Benny Goodman, you know. But within the idiom that I was involved in, I understood that I probably was at that level. That's why I was there.
Right. Yeah.
So it made sense, but it was just one of those things. Uh, I was too young to be there.
Well, according to the fan club publications, you weren't.
and and my friends back home, my band director, it meant so much. The fact, because I remember him saying to us, to all of us in the band, he says, when when you can play Carnegie Hall, you've accomplished something. But I didn't realize that I would accomplish that so soon in my life,
Right.
so
Mm-hmm.
because I still had a long life to go yet,
Yes.
so
And let's talk about that. Of course, you were only with the Buckaroos for, 3 years. A lot more career than that I feel like people don't realize. Tell me a little bit about your career after the Buckaroos.
well, I started pursuing jazz again.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so um, I after I left the Buckaroos, I moved to Canada. Okay, to be with my first wife,
Mm-hmm.
and I was in Canada maybe 5 6 years, and pretty well successful as a working musician. Okay,
Right.
and was also involved in the studios, playing country music, and did that. Uh, Recorded Snowbird about 50 different times
Oh my goodness.
with Canadian artists.
Yes.
So that was part of that. But at a certain time, I felt like I needed to come back to the States and find something else in music that I wasn't getting in Toronto.
Right.
So a good thing that I did, I decided to move to San Francisco. Okay. So once I was there, say like around 1973, 74, one thing kind of led to another. And all of a sudden, I started playing not only real standard type jazz, but also what became known as world music,
Right.
jazz influenced by different cultures,
Mm-hmm.
either African or from India. Those are the two main big influences that happened in the 70s. And you see, by then, uh, I had heard Frank Zappa. I had
Right.
heard in concert, I'd heard uh, John McLaughlin and the Mahavishnu Orchestra around
Mm-hmm.
1972. And that was the kind of music I was into at that time. And Miles Davis and
Yes.
Chick Corea, you know, the band Weather Report at the beginning was totally different than later. And so my taste in jazz had changed a lot. It
Right.
had it had really widened,
Yeah.
scope wise. And so therefore, and I was also studying with a African drummer. I was
Mm-hmm.
studying African drumming, like on congas.
Oh,
Okay,
awesome.
so and I was connecting with a lot of different people that were not so straight ahead jazz, and I was able to incorporate the congas and also percussion instruments in the music, and it was like no other music I had ever played before, and so that was a pretty great experience for me being in the Bay Area during that time.
Yes.
So it was a great learning experience
Right.
as well as playing, just with all these different people. And uh, so my goal was still to move to New York City,
Right.
which I did in the early 80s.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you notice I haven't mentioned any names because there's too many numerous well-known jazz personalities that I worked with in the Bay Area.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want to drop too many names.
Right. So after New York City, you made it back to Nashville, and that was another part. I know from what we've talked about before, that's been a part of your career that was also really pivotal, really important, especially with the Scottish pipe bands. Can you tell me a little bit about that? I think that is so interesting.
Okay, well, while I was in, I lived in New Jersey
Mhm.
most of the time for the 2 years that I was in New York, or just in the New York area.
Right.
And um, I, the sound of the bagpipes or wanting to get involved in music uh, wasn't with me necessarily all the time, but I happened to accidentally, well, not accident, I just, and in walking around one of the small towns there in the New York City area in New Jersey, uh, I just happened to go into this used record store. It was a book and record store. And I was looking around, and all of a sudden, I had this thought in my mind: I wonder if they have any Scottish music, bagpipes. So I asked these two ladies that were running the store, and they happened to be Scottish.
Wow.
So they said, we might have one or two selections there. And so I went a step further and I said, are there any pipe bands? Well, I didn't call it pipe bands because I didn't know what they were called back then.
Right.
But that's what they were, pipe bands.
Hmm.
And they said, well, there's the Sons of the Shillelagh, which is Irish. The shillelagh, do you know what that is?
I am not familiar.
It's a walking stick, okay, and it's Irish. So they gave me a phone number or something, someone to contact over there at it was like a Elks Club type
Hmm.
of building. And so I got in touch with somebody there and went over to hear this band, and they were all at the bar drinking. And so, so I said, well, I was told there was a pipe band rehearsal going on here. And they said, well, the only ones upstairs where they rehearse are the drummers. And I said, well, I'm a drummer. That's why I'm here. So I went upstairs, and the drummers were listening to Scottish pipe band drumming uh, cassette tape that featured the drums. And so I listened, and I was very impressed with what I heard, and stuck around and told them about, that I was curious about what a pipe band sounded like live. And they said, well, it's not us you want to hear. He said, we're basically a street band and a party band. As you can see, everybody's downstairs at the bar.
Right.
So, so I was given another phone number to call, and that turned out to be the Parliament and District Pipe Band. Uh, so I got in touch with those folks. They said, "Sure, come on down. We rehearse every Sunday." And so I drove down to uh, the place that they had designated, and I couldn't believe the sound. Once all the band formed up, maybe 10 or 12 pipers and 6 drummers, it was amazing.
Hmm.
Like I had never heard such a sound before, and that's what started it. So I started like taking lessons from the lead drummer, and which was um, maybe about 4 months worth of lessons. And I never did get to play with the band, but I was just basically a beginner. And I had no problem starting from the beginning, because I knew nothing about that type of music. So
Right.
in the meantime, I had wanted to leave the area and possibly move to Nashville. So when it came time for me to move to Nashville, I came with the thought of possibly finding a band in town. And as it turned out, there had never been any pipe bands in town. So I found that there was a Scottish shop close to where I was staying at, and so I went to that shopping center and talked to the lady there at the shop. It's just a small British Scottish shop.
Right.
That she sold various little things, and so she said, "Well, there's a Scottish society being formed in Nashville. for the first time ever, and we've had our first meeting, and there were a couple of gentlemen there that played the bagpipes. And so she said, she invited me down. She said, you should come down if you're interested in starting a band. Maybe you can do something with them.
Hmm.
So that's how it kind of started. And I met one gentleman that was interested in starting a band. And so it was still a ways uh, before I could actually do anything. I was on the road, traveling on the road at that time. So whenever I'd come home, I would get in touch with that piper, and we got together and played, just the two of us. And I just kind of was just in love with it, and decided what we needed to do to try and get people out that had an interest in learning to play the pipes or the drums. And that's how we started.
Got to start
And
from somewhere.
it became the National Pipes and Drums. That was the name that I came up with, and
It's a
it's
good name.
so that was kind of like the beginning. I co-found two pipe bands in Nashville. I was only in that band for 2 or 3 years, and because of my work on the road, I couldn't stick around. So, and then later I was approached again by a piper from New Jersey, actually, uh, of Irish descent, and a very good player. And he wanted to start another band. I found we met accidentally, and so we started another band, and it became the Tennessee Scots. So now Nashville had two pipe bands,
Mhm.
as small as they were, but still two bands. So that lasted for a good. I was involved in that for about 25 years.
Wow.
Okay, and I had to drop out because of health reasons, dealing with my hearing. So, but I mean, I was very much into the style of music,
Right.
and uh, did so much into the history of it.
Mhm.
So I interviewed like about half a dozen Scottish pipe band drummers, if you could believe this, through phone or through cassette tape.
Mhm.
I found out how to get in touch with certain people, and these interviews appeared in the Canadian magazine, Pipe Band Drummer.
Mhm.
This is like 20 years ago or so ago. So that was about my contribution uh, into the pipe band world.
That's super
So,
interesting. I would never have thought of that, but it's so wonderful, like being able to have so many different kinds of cultural music. And I feel like you've really dived into a lot of that throughout your career.
well, I have mainly African drumming and Scottish. That's uh, that's big enough of a gap there.
Yep. So that's a pretty good variety, I think. So, aside from all of that, all of the things that you've been involved in your career, what are you up to currently?
Uh, I enjoy teaching.
Hmm.
Okay, I've been doing that since the 90s.
Right.
Okay, so I pretty well teach five days a week. Not in Nashville, but in like Lebanon, which is not too far, maybe a half hour away. Okay, at a music store there, a local the only music store in town. So that's Topper's Music. So I teach there. I've been there for over 10 years,
Right.
and I have uh, a jazz group that we get together once a week to play for a couple of hours. And so that's about the only jazz playing that I do at this point. And I just work with whoever calls,
Hmm.
needing a drummer. For years, I spent like about 15 years at a place called the National Palace.
Right.
And so that was like my steady gig. But that's long past. And I don't think I could. handle playing 7 nights a week anymore.
Oh my goodness. That is a
But
lot.
I'm not retired, but I'm still playing
Mhm.
enough to be active, so.
Mhm. That's good to stay involved in something that you love so much. Obviously, teaching and stuff, I'm sure you deal with a lot of, aspiring musicians, younger people, or young at heart people who are still beginners. What is your advice to people who want to pursue music or people who want to pursue any passion that they have in general?
Well, follow that passion. Don't give it up. That's all I can really say. If you really want to play, then you'll put up with whatever you have to. And
That's so true.
become as well prepared as you can to deal with whatever type of music you want to play, you know.
Well, that is
And
great sound advice.
you have to love the music in order to stay with it through all that you go through. And it pays back what you put into it.
Hmm.
It's the fans that make the music, what it is, in a sense.
Yeah,
Without the fans, what have we got?
right.
We're stuck in a garage.
Yes, that's so true. Well, I am so grateful that we got to talk about all of that. And I've been playing music myself, obviously not professionally, but for about 17 years. So I know that it takes a lot of dedication and a lot of passion. And I grew up appreciating, some of the music that you helped create, which was the Bucko and sound. So being able to just talk to you about this, having grown up hearing about that music from my parents and my grandparents, is just so cool to be able to talk to someone who was there and who helped to create that sound. So again, I cannot thank you enough for taking the time out of your day to talk about some of your memories from your career, and then some of the lesser known things that you were involved in, and also to offer up some advice to anybody who might watch or listen to this interview. So again, I do not have the words to say thank you for doing this. Your perspective and your experience, being able to get that firsthand, is just such a blessing and something that I'm sure so many people would love to be able to do. So I'm so grateful. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. And by the time this interview goes on YouTube, it will be your birthday. So a happy early birthday to you coming up as well.
And you know how old I'm going to be, right?
78?
78, that's correct.
Correct.
So
Despite the wrong numbers in all of the fan club publications that
I'm
I've
not as
looked
old
through.
as I gave myself credit
Right.
to.
I think I saw a post as I was, looking around, curating some content for the page once. I think I saw a post from a couple of years ago wishing you a happy 80th birthday. And
Oh,
I was like, oh no, we still got like 2 more years. Not yet. Not
yeah,
yet.
not yet. But thank you so much for doing this.
Of course,
You
it
know,
is a great pleasure of mine. And just know that I know that you're not on social media and you're not on the internet a lot, but there are so many people out there who still admire you so much, and definitely look to you as an influence and a role model, as someone who just immersed themselves into the music industry and did everything they could to set themselves up for success. So there are a lot of really excited folks out here who are looking forward to watching this interview. So they're going to love this. They're going to enjoy this so
well,
much.
I understand what you're talking about because I am a fan myself of other people. So it's, I know what you're talking about.
It's
So
always good
thank
to be
you.
a fan of something.
Thank you very much.
Of course. What an honor it was to get to have that wonderful conversation with Willie Cantu. I am in awe of everything he shared today about his time being a buckaroo and some of the things that he's learned from the music industry, whether that was being a part of the Bakersfield sound, living in another country, or even learning about the music of other cultures. Willie is such a treasure trove of information and great advice, and I'm so glad that you all got to listen in as we had that conversation. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Bakersfield Redux, and until the next one, always remember to keep a song in your heart.